Join us for an exclusive interview with real estate mogul and businessman Frank Zaccanelli as we dive into the 2024 presidential election and what it means for American financials and the economy. Stay tuned.
Welcome to The Right to Inspire. Journalist and host Sarah Strackhouse has worked at Fox News, the CW, CBS, NBC, and Time Warner cable stations across the country for more than 10 years and is now focused on telling inspiring stories of those dedicated to making change. She's driving the message home that ultimately you have the right, the freedom, and the power to be the change you want to see in the world. You have the right to inspire.
Thank you so much for joining us for The Right to Inspire. We are so excited to bring on today's guest. It is Frank Zaccanelli. Before I go into your background, I want to say hello. How are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
Good. It's been a long time since I've seen you, but I knew that after the presidential election, there was one person that I really needed to bring on here because you have such a robust background, real estate mogul, businessman. Let's go ahead and roll a quick montage because I want to talk a little bit about your background. So you've been in the world of domestic and international business and professional sports for more than 40 years. You were a former minority owner and president and general manager of the Dallas Mavericks. You worked with Ross Perot. You were on 2 of his campaigns, and you have commented all over national news organizations. Everyone values your opinion. So thank you so much for coming on, because I think one of the biggest things about this election was people were really surprised that former President Trump ended up winning, but I don't think people realize how much people vote with their pocketbooks, and finances are some of the biggest voter opportunities, I think. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about inflation, what this means for everyone. I want to talk about your background, but first let's talk about the election. So thank you again for coming on.
Well, first of all, it's great to be back with you. For the viewing audience, Sarah and I had a show a couple of years ago called the To Be Frank Show. It was the second season of the To Be Frank Show, but the second season was Zach and Strack.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I think we did maybe 5-6 shows.
Yeah, and we talked about everything politics from, I think at the time Trump was in and we were talking about all things with the new administration coming in. I mean, it was all things politics and finances, which I really think is something that, you can shed a lot of light on, because people are worried. People have been worried the past 4 years, the past, 6 years about inflation and all of the struggles on the pocketbook for the, middle class, the majority.
Yeah.
So the initial question, I think 63, I saw a stat the other day that was saying that 63% of all people that are voting from the Pew Research Center, they said that 63%, that is their biggest concern. So when it comes to inflation, what policies do you think can President Trump put into place? How is this going to be fixed? Is it going to be fixed? What are some of the steps that need to be taken?
Well, we've talked prior to this, and where this is coming from, but 30%, Sarah, of the cost of goods is in transportation costs. Mm-hmm. So if you think about that, goods are being moved all over the country, all over the world, and the transportation costs are 30% of the actual cost of the goods. If transportation costs have doubled, you start right there that is a major factor in the inflationary curve that you are seeing now that people are having to live with. I think Donald Trump, and I always call him the Donald, so I can call him the Donald. Mm-hmm. And there's a long story that goes with that. We won't have time today, but he's the Donald. Understands that and is going to start immediately with lowering the energy cost and the cost of fossil fuels that will ultimately have an immediate impact. That will have an immediate impact on lowering prices. Mm. When people think about price gouging, I'm not saying that there's not a lot of price gouging that's going along with this, but these inflationary curves, the cost of money, the borrowing that our country has done. We have a deficit right now and a national debt. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's become a gigantic problem, and that will eventually be a fundamental issue as we go forward.
Right.
with things like inflation. But inflation is really caused by a supply and demand curve also. Coming right out of COVID, there was a huge demand need, but not as much supply because COVID had shut down a lot of stuff. And it appears to me with all the Biden policies with Kamala Harris, it just got worse and worse and worse to the point that I think that groceries now, I think I saw some, and maybe you have this number, like 60, 70% higher than they were maybe 5 years ago.
Yep.
That's a bunch of things that add in. But the energy cost is going to be the first thing that Trump is going to fix. That is about 30% of this inflationary curve. What
you're saying, in a sense, will then trickle down into the grocery stores, into people's pocketbooks. Do you think we can get to a place where we're going to be energy independent again?
I believe so. But let me go back to one thing. I've been involved in the real estate business, as you know, and I have very good friends that are in the home building business. I'll give you a great statistic. In 2019, before COVID, a house that cost $1 million to build in Dallas, Texas, today costs $1.4 million. Wow. The exact same house, the same lumber, the same appliances, the same carpeting. So it's all tied into this gigantic increase in goods, right?
Well, and let me ask you this question, because I've seen people talk about this. You watch the media, there's the left side, the right side, what have you. Is the inflation growth, has it been that astronomical, or is it just the growth of the country and the changes coming into the country and the growth of time and changes of time?
No, I think it's policy, and I think that it's self-imposed. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to be on some inflationary curve, right? But I think Trump was running somewhere 1.5%, 2%. Biden and Kamala Harris were running about 9% at one point. Now it's come down from there, but the housing thing is really a good one, because for all these young people, when you take the cost of housing and then you take the cost of money, the mortgage rates. I mean, you were telling me earlier, you got a mortgage rate of what, 2%?
We're locked into 2% from COVID.
And now if you went out to get a mortgage rate, it's 6.5%, 6.8%.
Right.
I mean, that's a gigantic factor.
Oh, yeah.
And then you talk about the increase in all of these commodities, right? It's all commodity based. And so it becomes impossible for a young couple to go buy a house. That's the American dream. When you go to the grocery store, I'm very blessed and fortunate enough that it doesn't affect me. I know it and I see it. It doesn't affect me and my family, but I know the effect that it has on the average person because, I grew up, in a very middle class, lower middle class family. I remember all of that stuff. So I think that Donald Trump is going to also this is going to be a big inflationary boost. He's going to take all these regulations that Biden and Harris have put on the economy, all this mass regulation. You know what all that does? Costs more money. Takes more time, costs more money, which means the price of goods go up. So between what he'll do with the energy prices and the deregulation of all these unnecessary regulations, I predict in the first 3 to 6 months, you'll see 50 to 60% of the inflation go away just based on those two things.
Wow. I was just going to ask you, how long do you think that's going to take? 3 to 6 months. That's a good number.
Yeah.
So talking a little bit about inflation, money coming in, there's been a big conversation, obviously, surrounding tariffs, what that looks like. And if there's no federal income tax, are there tariffs? We've seen all these places, all these different news outlets talking about the money is then going to come back to the consumer. Is it going to be higher? First off, explain to everyone what tariffs really mean as it pertains to our country, and your thoughts on the benefit or lack thereof for the American people.
Yeah. Well, what tariffs really are, Sarah, it is an importing fee that when you're taking products in from other countries in the world, it's an importing fee that you charge for those goods being made offshore. Okay, it's that simple, right? Now, a huge argument by the Democrats that I never understood, because it really doesn't make sense, is that these tariffs are going to increase the inflation. They're going to do all this stuff. Donald Trump is a smart enough businessman that he is going to use these tariffs as a club. He's going to use it almost the stick and the carrot. The stick is going to be the tariffs, but the carrot's going to be build your factory in the United States and you'll have zero tariff, which ultimately is going to increase, the job growth in the country.
Right.
And the interesting thing about that is that the tariffs that he still has on that Biden kept for 4 years in Harris when they were knocking the tariffs with China have brought in hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, because every place that we go, especially China, when we send our goods there, the tariffs that we were paying were much higher than the tariffs that we were charging.
Right.
And Trump tried to level the playing field. I believe what he's going to do, especially with Mexico, he's going to use it as a tool.
Right.
In other words, Mexico, I want to remain in Mexico policy on the immigration. You stay there or not, I'm going to charge 50% on every product that's shipped over the southern border. Nice. It's not going to take Mexico very long to figure out, well, we can't do that. Okay. So he's going to use it as a tool. He's going to use it as a tool. He's smart enough to know.
Well, and I was going to say, so that's a very interesting concept. And I haven't heard people talking about that, because I recently saw even the Columbia Sportswear CEO coming out saying that, they're ready to raise prices. They're ordering stuff for next year already, and they're ready to raise prices because of the tariffs, and it's going to come into the American pocketbooks. But if he's using it for a bargaining tool, then I think it.
Well, what the Columbia guy's basically telling everybody?
What?
We're making our stuff somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
If he was making his stuff in the United States, it wouldn't be a problem.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing. How are we going to bring manufacturing back to America? How is that going to positively impact the people's, the lowly consumer,
Well, two ways.
Okay.
More than two, but two major ways. Mm-hmm. First, he's going to lower corporate taxes. So he's going to take the corporate tax rate down from where it exists today. I think he was talking about 13, 14, 15%, somewhere in there. So he's going to make it very attractive to have your business in the United States. Kamala Harris wanted to increase the corporate tax, and that would have done nothing except drive more companies away.
Right.
So Trump is going to basically make sure that the tax side is right.
Okay.
The other side to the equation is, in terms of labor and everything, he's going to make absolutely sure, I believe, that the whole labor programs are all tied together in a way where the jobs are going exactly where they have to go. That becomes another big factor inside the economy, because, people's expendable incomes is going to become a very important factor here. I mean, I think that people are ready now to be able to say, I want to own a home. Mm-hmm. I want to go to the grocery store where I'm not paying $10 for eggs. I mean, I don't know what they cost, but it's a lot of money.
Right.
And I want to get back to a border where my family feels secure. I mean, the timing in this whole election thing was perfect for Trump. I never thought he was going to lose, because you take a look, if 70% of the people are not happy with the way things are going, how was anybody else going to win that had been involved with that?
But I think the struggle was that you see so many ads and so many signs for the Harris campaign, and you think that, okay, I'm on an island. If you voted for Trump, then it's okay, I'm on an island. No one's going to vote for it. But I think the American people spoke. Their pocketbook is what matters. Their home, their family, what they can provide, what they can put on the table, that matters. I mean, I was feeding my sons the other day, and there are 2 little boys, and on top of that, I have my husband and myself. And,
well, then you have 3 little boys.
Right, exactly. I literally am feeding like a house full of football players. And it's, a whole thing of blueberries just down the drain. And I was like, well, that's like, $15 just immediately down the hatchet. And little stuff like that, it adds up. And, whether or not you're, in a good place financially, it's still, those things matter to the American people.
Well, let me date myself for a minute. Okay. But I was alive when John Kennedy was shot. Mm-hmm. 1963, I think I was in 2nd grade.
Okay.
And my parents were Kennedy Democrats. Okay. That doesn't exist anymore. The Democratic Party has left everybody that was center and moved so far to the left. And I think what's going to happen now, as a matter of fact, I know.
Yeah.
I've still got some really good friends in Washington, and I can tell you their platform is going to completely change, because they know they can't win any more elections with this. And I'd like to have a strong Democratic Party. I think that would help our country. But they went so far to the left because of Biden not keeping his promises, and Kamala Harris being the most liberal senator for years and years and years inside the Senate, that they just went off the map. And I think the old guard, the old guard in Washington on the Democratic Party side is going to try to bring that party back closer to center, where we can now see some rationalization to understanding what people need. They didn't listen to the American people. One thing Donald Trump has done, no matter how much he might aggravate you or how much you might not like the way he talks, he went out and transformed the Republican Party and basically made it a party of the working class people. Everyone says, well, he's only given tax breaks to billionaires. That's not true. That's not true. Everybody's going to get the tax breaks. And the more money that goes in the economy, the better we are. The only fatal flaw that I see that's out there, I have to mention this again, is that we have a national debt, and I want to say it's $34 trillion and counting. The interest on the debt, you ready for this, is more than our military budget.
Wow.
So if you think about it that way, the interest on our debt now, because interest rates are up, is more than what we spend on our military budget. That's scary. That has to be addressed. Something has to happen there.
That is actually going to be one of my next questions. I mean, Pew Research Center said 70% are expecting the deficit to worsen over the next 5 years. Are there any policies that President Trump and his administration could put into place to fix that?
The only policy that I know that has to at some point come to the forefront is that we have to have a balance between what we're spending and what we're bringing in. Now, his view of the world, it's almost supply side economics. It's not quite, but it's almost that, where I'm going to create so much economic windfall that people are going to make more money, they're going to pay more taxes, and it's going to balance out kind of in that manner, right?
Right.
But how do you pay back $34 trillion when you're losing money every year? That'd be like if you and I owned a hotel.
Yeah.
And we owe all this money to the banker on the hotel, but we're losing money every year. How do you ever pay the debt back?
You don't.
So it's like the crazy ant in the kitchen, in the closet, excuse me. The crazy ant in the closet. You know she's there. She's making noise, but nobody wants to go talk to her.
Yeah.
That's what this national debt issue is. It wasn't mentioned one time during the campaign from either side. I think that's the one fatal flaw potentially in the economy. But when you look at everything that we just talked about, Trump's policies, I think, are going to be very good for the economy, and I think very good for the lowering of inflation, as we just spoke about.
Well, and hopefully we won't be sending billions of dollars to other countries. We'll be putting that and reinvesting that money into America to try to help that deficit, help the people here. You know, we're worrying about all of these other countries, but we still can't take care of, like, even our veterans. You brought up our veterans, 7,700 are homeless every single night.
But I believe if we had better leadership in the White House, which I believe we're getting, I mean, Trump has made a blanket statement. I'm going to end the war before I take my oath of office. He said that.
You know what's funny is I just recently saw Congressman Byron Donalds. He put out a Trump effect that was 72 hours after winning the 2024 election. First female chief of staff appointed, New York City to stop giving debit cards to illegals, U.S. companies bring production home, stock market hitting all-time highs, Bitcoin hitting all-time highs, newest migrant caravan breaking up, Qatar agrees to evict Hamas leaders. Hamas wants to immediately end the war. Taliban claims to want a new chapter. China wants peaceful coexistence. I mean, I can go on and on. Russia is ready to speak with the U.S. EU wants to buy U.S. gas, not Russian. Ukrainian leaders are in talks with Trump and Elon. I mean, already all of these changes or conversations are open.
And you can sum it up in one sentence: peace through strength. That's exactly where this is going. Peace through strength.
Right.
Because you really can't have peace in this world today unless you have the strength to be able to back it up. Donald Trump ended wars. He didn't get us in one war.
Right.
That was not the biggest argument that everyone ever had. I mean, you got January 6th, and you got a lot of stuff I wish he didn't do. And for people that are watching this, I'm not one of these Trumpers that just stands on my car and starts yelling. But I think that he's going to do a better job in his second term. It's almost like he's going to be a much better president because he sat out a term. Now, for our country, it hasn't been good because things have gone completely south because Biden has, quite frankly, been not a good president. He's been asleep at the wheel. And, there was a video I saw yesterday when he was on the beach in Delaware, and he almost fell 3 times. I mean, I
saw that.
I feel it was just a bad look. And you know what? He's given his life to public service. Has he been a good president? In my mind, no. He moved too far to the left. He let his vice president move him too far to the left. But he should be celebrated as a guy who gave his life to his country and gave his life to, the public realm. So, I think it's time. He certainly isn't cognitively ready to, do this. And you think about this election, what's going to go down in history is going to be they changed the candidate. Kamala Harris has never gotten a vote for anything except she got elected to the Senate.
Well, and I was going to say, we actually have a graph of the presidential.
Well, let's take
a look at that. The presidential numbers, just basically talking about where they ended. Yeah, exactly. There you go. The president, and just how red that country is. And if you look, actually, even I was going to say, I forgot to send in this other one, but just those numbers. Just keeping
other than 4 states, right?
312.
Other than 4 states, right? This is a coastal experiment now for the Democrats.
Yep.
Just take a look at it.
Yep.
It's a coastal experiment. Other than 4 states in Hawaii, God bless the people in Hawaii. They're just having a good time out there. But I mean, most of the country has come to the conclusion that we have to change things.
Right.
And so, that
4 million, he won 4 million popular votes. I mean, the popular vote hasn't been for the American president in a very long time.
Well, that was a big argument. Well, for a Republican.
Yeah.
That was a big argument in 2016 is that he lost the popular vote.
Right.
He won it easily now, which means that people want change. They want to go to the grocery store and feel better. They want to go home at night not worried about the borders. They want to make sure that they have a job. See, everybody wants the same thing,
right.
Sarah. They want health. They want safety. Ability to put food on their table, take care of their children, educate their children. No matter if you're black, white, green, yellow, doesn't matter. You want the same thing. And I think Donald has a chance to unite the country if he's smart. That's going to be something that I'd really like to see. I'd like to see him be a lot more of a uniter because now he's a lame duck president. So he's got 4 years left. I think that he'll do a lot of things early that will start to send the signal, to people in the country and around the world. Right. But remember, this peace through strength, that's what you're starting to see now.
Yep. I love that. Well, Frank, thank you so much for coming on. I want to leave people with a lasting note of, any advice you have for people, whether it comes to finances, the country, people, what they should be doing, any advice you have for the people watching.
Well, again, I think the paramount issue for a young family is home ownership. Okay. And I'd like to see that get settled out very, very quickly. If you have the ability to buy a home, that is a tenement. That is a in stone, situation in the United States that's very unique. Everyone wants to be and own their own home. Interest rates and the cost of goods, everything that I mentioned, I think is going to make it in the next 6 months, maybe 12 months on the housing side, more affordable to be able to do that. I think interest rates are going to come down. The mortgage rates are going to come down. And I think the cost of goods are going to come down. So that's going to be a dynamic situation that's going to allow for people to have more affordability to be able to do this. I think the second thing is that people are going to want all these great job opportunities. And I think as the economy continues to grow and expand and more jobs, I think they'll be able to feel a lot better about their own careers and everything that they're doing and have this upward mobility that I think is a big deal.
Yep.
And then it's a matter of, as I told my own children, don't get caught up on living on debt. Unfortunately, our country is caught up in living on debt based on what I've told you. But don't get caught up living on debt. Some debt is okay, that's serviceable, but don't get caught up living on debt and kind of take things in their progression. As your income starts to grow and everything else, then you can start to do different things. But I think a family really feels more like a family when they can go and buy a house, get it financed, and live in the house and grow their family. That's the big part of what I think has been missing now for the last 4 years. It's just become unaffordable.
Right. Well, actually, a few days ago, I heard a statistic. I believe it was NBC or CBS. I can't remember now. And it was saying that the average home buyer is now in their 50s. The average first time, not the first time, but the average home buyer in general in America is in their 50s.
Yeah.
And it made me sad to hear that and hear that that's who's the average buying home right now. Like, it just, everything that you're saying is,
because you grew up on the East Coast, right?
Yep.
I mean, you go to certain places in New York and Connecticut, it's unaffordable no matter what.
Yep.
You go out to Los Angeles and San Francisco, it's unaffordable.
Yep.
And I don't think it's sustainable.
Right.
And again, what's happened in California could be a whole 10-show series in terms of what they've done out there. But we're the net beneficiary here in Dallas, Texas, in Austin and Dallas of people that are just sick and tired of the politics, in California, sick of the high taxes. People want to spend their own money. Yeah. They believe that they know how to spend their money better than the government knows how to spend it.
I think most people are probably correct.
Amen.
Well, thank you again, Frank, so much for coming on. Yeah, thank you.
It's great to be with you. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. Don't forget you have the right, the freedom, and the power to be the change that you want to see in the world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.